Okay, guys. Morning. So for Tuesday's class this week, just a reminder. Three things involved. One thing is listen to this lecture um, in YouTube, which is on our second Dante reading, and the second thing is post your reflective writings in the discussion board post. And then that says Dante reflective writing. And then the third thing, reply, write a brief reply, maybe 50 words to two of your classmates, what they've written. So to talk a minute about just the overall picture of Dante's Divine Comedy, I mean, you might have noticed that we're only reading, of course, it's divided into three sections, right? The Inferno or Hell and Purgatory and Paradise or Heaven. And it's interesting that, in most classroom settings, the only thing that ever gets read is the Inferno, selections from it. In fact, the Inferno is often published by itself without the other two sections. And you almost never see the other sections published by themselves. And that raises an interesting question in the mind. It's kind of the same thing there's a famous work called Paradise Lost. And the author of that, John Milton, he also wrote Paradise Regained after. Paradise Lost is about how Adam and Eve sin and are forced to leave the Garden of Eden, and it ushers evil into the world, right? Paradise Regained is about Christ coming back and fixing things, so to speak, and people, read Paradise Lost all the time. That gets taught all the time in schools, in universities. Paradise Regained rarely gets taught. And, a couple of questions come to mind. Is it because Purgatory and Paradise, these sections are inferior as far as literary style goes to the Inferno? Is it because Paradise Regained is inferior in a literary sense to Paradise Lost? And I don't think that is the case. I think it's more the case that, in general, human beings, you, me, we're pretty messy. We've got all sorts of faults. We do all sorts of stuff that, we don't look up to ourselves for, things that we're ashamed of. And so maybe in a sense, humanity as a whole relates more to the Inferno, because the Inferno is about bad people who feel like they can't be redeemed. It's like, okay, these people are just bad. They've just got these flaws and that can't be fixed. And the same thing with Paradise Lost. Maybe Paradise Lost just rings truer to human experience because it's about our flaws. It's about the way we screw things up. And that's what we've been doing, it feels like, ever since the beginning of human history, on the other hand, coming from a personal perspective as a Christian, I find Purgatory and Paradise just as interesting. Really, I've read all of the comedy recently, and I'm reading it again now for the second time. I turned right around and started reading it again. And to me, Purgatory and Paradise are the most interesting parts. And I think a lot of it has to do with, do you believe in redemption? In redemption in two senses, not just the spiritual religious, but also just, do you believe that when we've gone and totally screwed stuff up, that anything can make that better? Anything can can fix that, you know. So it's, you know, and again, personally, I come from it from the perspective of I believe in, you know, God's redemptive work in the world, you know, that He is able to take me with all my screwed up aspects, you know, and all my dark thoughts, all my, you know, the stupid things I do, and He's able to redeem that, you know. Um, but again, redemption isn't a concept that's just a religious concept. A lot of people struggle with, is there any way when you've totally screwed stuff up, is there any way for that to be fixed? That's what purgatory and paradise are about in a spiritual sense, you know? And that's what, and maybe, yeah. So for what it's worth, you know, just some thoughts, some perspective on the inferno and purgatory and paradise, and why it is that, you know, what it says about our mentality, about the way we think and see the world and understand ourselves, that the inferno gets read so much more than purgatory and paradise do, for better or worse. If this is my first time teaching this, and I've worked largely from other professors' syllabuses, you know, working from the readings they recommend. If I, hopefully I'll be teaching this course again, you know, sometime. And when I do, I think I'll bring more in from purgatory, more in from paradise, and not just read from the inferno. Okay, so all of that said, let's look at this second reading that we're doing. So Dante enters into hell, or the inferno, on Maundy, Thursday, Maundy, Thursday, which is the Thursday. That's the night of the Last Supper. That's the night that, that Christians usually remember the event of the Last Supper, which is when Jesus meets with his 12 disciples for the last time to eat. He has dinner with them for the last time before he's killed, before he's crucified. And he tells them, this bread is my body, which I'm giving for you. This wine is my blood, which I'm giving for you. Remember me when you eat this. Remember me when you drink this. Remember what I did for you, right? And so on that night, which is the beginning of Jesus's sufferings, and eventually it's going to wind up in him being crucified, you know, that's when Dante enters into hell, into the inferno. And then the night in which he comes out, when he exits heaven, so on the day that he exits paradise, heaven, it's Easter Sunday. It's Easter Sunday when Jesus comes back to life, you know? And so it's all joy and happiness and excitement. And sorry for that annoying dinging that's going on. Hold on a minute. Let me see if I can fix this. Hold on. Sorry. Okay. So looking back at this, so Dante exits heaven. I mean, he exits heaven on Easter Sunday, which is when Christ is resurrected. Yeah, so he enters on a moment of despair. He exits on a moment of joy and excitement, right? So sorry for that little distraction in there. Okay, so let's look at, let's just pick through this stuff. Virgil and Dante, they meet Odysseus in one of the rings. And when they do meet Odysseus, Virgil is like, "Whoa, Dante, I know you're usually the one that speaks, but let me speak this time. Let me speak to Odysseus." And the reason being that Virgil, he wrote the book on Odysseus, right? And on the Greeks and the Romans. He wrote the greatest classic on it. And so he's like, "I feel like I would relate to this guy more than you." And Odysseus, he's known to have, he's a warrior. He might not like you too much, so let me talk with him. Okay, why particular? So Ulysses, who is also Odysseus, they're the same person, right? Why is Odysseus or Ulysses in the eighth ring of hell? The eighth ring of hell is for those who have given evil counsel, for people who have given other people bad counsel, bad advice, and bad stuff has come from it. And so, in a nutshell, the story of Ulysses, after the Trojan War, the Trojan horse is Ulysses' idea. And because of that, the gods who were in favor of the Trojans get angry at Ulysses. So on the way back home, to his island that he rules, Ithaca, Ulysses gets, the crap beat out of his ships and stuff, and gets attacked by the gods who were in favor of Troy because they're mad that he tricked the Trojans with the Trojan horse. And so he has all these adventures, and that's called the Odyssey, named after Odysseus, right? Who, with the Romans, becomes Ulysses. Well, finally, he gets back to his home, and he kills a bunch of guys who have been trying to, have been trying to get his wife to dump him and marry them so that they could take his kingdom while he was absent, because they all assumed he died. And so he gets back, he kills all these men who have been trying to take his wife and his kingdom while he was gone. And then he sits around for a while, and he just gets bored. I mean, this is a man who's traveled around the world. He's gone and fought in Troy. And he can't stand to sit there anymore. So he rounds up all of his old fighting buddies, the ones that survived, his men, and they get back on their ship and they go off to find the end of the earth. And Odysseus leaves his son in charge of his country. And his men are like, "I don't know, this is sketchy." And Odysseus is like, "Come on, let's go a little further. And finally, they get sucked into this giant whirlpool at the edge of the world and they die. And so because Odysseus, because he wasn't willing to stay at home where he should have stayed after his adventures at Troy, and because he talks all of his men into going on this disastrous trip with him in which they finally get sucked into this whirlpool, he's put in this eighth ring for people who give disastrous advice to others. So that's why he's there. That also found in that ring is, of all people, Muhammad, who founded Islam, right? The religion of Islam. And no, he's in another ring. So Muhammad is in another ring. It's the ring for those who cause division and discord, who cause division and discord between people. And so Muhammad is found in that ring because when he founded Islam, he caused discord between those who believe in Christianity and those who don't. So Muhammad has been consigned to this ring of hell for splitting up, for dividing people's way of thinking by starting a new religion. In Canto 31, Dante and Virgil discover these terrifying giants. There are these huge giants that are buried like up to the waist in rock, and they're suffering there. They're writhing around in their pain and their agony, trapped in these rocks. Because, and this is a complicated story, but in the early chapters of Genesis, you have these half-god, it says that like the fallen angels come to earth and have sexual relations with human women, And as a result, this race of giants is born who rebel against God. And, some people, yeah, some ancient traditions have it that they're the ones who build this Tower of Babel where they're trying to reach up to heaven and prove that they're greater than God. And so, because of their rebellion against God, these giants have been consigned to one of these rings of hell where they're like buried waist up in the rock, in the earth. Personally, this really reminds me of when Aeneas and the Sibyl are in the underworld, and they find the Titans, these giants who had rebelled. This older race of lowercase gods who had rebelled against Zeus and Aphrodite and all of them, and so they were consigned to this place of suffering in the underworld. This race of titans who are like lowercase gods, i.e., titans. You also get the mind of like giants in rebellion, right? So there seems to be an interesting comparison between the two there. Um, Now, you may have noticed as you're reading through this, and you find this all through the Inferno. Whenever Dante meets somebody, Dante is always asking people he meets in the Inferno, what's your story? Tell me why you're here. Even tell me who you are, because a lot of times he doesn't know who people are, and he's like, who are you? Why are you here? Often they don't want to talk with him, at first. They're like, why are you here pestering me? You're not even supposed to be here. I can tell you're not dead. You're not a spirit. Why are you even here, and why are you bothering me? And so often as a way of getting people, so Dante's kind of like the reporter going around that nobody wants to talk to, right? And as a way of encouraging people to talk with him, Dante always tells them, he's like, I'm going to go back to Earth and I'm going to write all this down. And you will be remembered. You will be famous if you're not already famous, because he talks with a lot of people who are like Italians, because a lot of the Divine Comedy is actually political in a sense. Like Dante, who is in exile himself, he's actually in exile when he's writing this. We talk about all sorts of characters wind up in exile throughout the readings that we've done, right? But Dante is actually in exile himself as he's writing this. And he's ticked off at the people who sent him into exile, and he's got other issues with political figures in Italy, and so a lot of the Divine Comedy is political. He meets certain people there, certain people he's like, oh, I found this person in hell, meaning he didn't like that person, and so they've wound up there, or he was against that person politically, and when they died, he says they wound up here, or this person wound up in heaven, or this person wound up in purgatory, and he meets them there, right? And so, especially in the Inferno, when people are like, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to tell you who I am, why are you bothering me? Dante's like, if you will tell me about yourself, then I will go back and tell people about you so that you will be famous. He's like, I will make you famous. You can talk to me and I will write down the truth about you. If you feel you've been unjustly attacked on Earth, I will write down the truth about what happened to you. I'll make you famous. And it's kind of like, whoa, this is like going way back to our first day of class, Gilgamesh and stuff, What was one thing people were after? They were after immortality. They want to be known about. And so there's definitely, I think there's definitely a connection here in the Inferno to the underworld of Gilgamesh and of the Greeks and Romans, in the sense that people there, like, they want to be immortalized. They want people to remember who they are. They want to get the story straight. And Dante's like, I'll immortalize you. I'll get the story straight. I'll go back to Earth and I'll write about you if you'll talk with me. So the final ring, the ninth level of hell, the final ring, the ninth level of hell, actually has 3 levels to itself. But that's taught just in Canto 32, as they're in the ninth ring of hell. All of the ninth ring is for traitors. They're for people who have betrayed friends, betrayed countries, whatever. It's for traitors, Um, and it's interesting that in the ninth ring of hell, where eventually you're going to find the devil, and people imagine, even people imagine that the middle of the earth, which is what Dante's traveling down through, he's traveling down through the earth to the middle, and that's the levels. The middle of the earth is supposed to be boiling hot, right? It's supposed to be molten lava or something. So Dante is shocked when his character gets down there that it's ice. And he's like, Virgil, what's going on here? And all the people are trapped in the ice, And Virgil's like, whoa, careful, because you may step on somebody's finger that's sticking up out of the ice, or you may step on their face that's poking up out of the ice. And Dante actually does accidentally step on a few hands and faces, and the people get mad at him, and he's got to apologize at them. They're like, dude, I'm already suffering enough. Why do you step on my face, But they're all covered in ice, and it's like, why the ice? Why is it freezing cold down there where he thought it would be molten lava? And the ice is actually the river Cocytus, which is one of the rivers that flows through the underworld. And so the river Cocytus is frozen down here at the center of the earth. And why is it like that? Is because the devil is down there, and when they meet the devil, this is an interesting thing. The devil has got these two huge bat-like wings, and he himself is trapped in ice, and he's got these two huge wings, and he is beating the river, and the wind from his wings is cooling the river to the point where it's so cold that it's frozen. And so that's why it's so cold down there. And in the devil's mouth, and he's giant, he's huge. In Satan's mouth, he's actually got 3 heads. He's got 3 faces, and in each mouth is one of 3 people. One of them is Judas, who betrayed Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. So these are like the arch traitors. One of them is, and the other 2 are Brutus and Cassius, who were responsible for the assassination of Julius Caesar. And so these 3 men are supposed to be the greatest traitors, and they're all being chewed on by the devil at the center of hell. So they meet the devil, and to me, this is the part of, if any part of the Inferno feels like a video game, it's this, or like a stunning scene from a scene from an action movie, because they've gotten to the center. I mean, their journey through hell is over, and it's like, how are they going to get out now? And the way they get out is Virgil slings Dante on his back, and in the moment when Satan's wings are forward, when the devil's wings are forward, Virgil jumps onto the devil's back, and holding on to the hair that is on the devil's spine, he climbs down. So he's literally climbing down the devil's giant hairy back as the wings are like opening and closing, timing the opening and closing of the wings. He's literally climbing down his giant hairy back with Dante slung over his shoulder, and they descend. And as they descend, the gravity shifts because they're on the other side of the planet. And they end up going up this tunnel, and when they come out this tunnel, they ascend, and when they come out the tunnel, the first thing they see is the stars, which, and they're out in peacefulness, out of all this suffering, out of the Inferno. They've come out into the stars, come out into a field where they look up and they see the stars, and now they're going to start on Purgatory, which, climbing the mountain of Purgatory, which goes to the Garden of Eden, from which they go on from which Dante goes on without Virgil, because Virgil has to go back to the first ring of the Inferno. And from in the Garden of Eden, Dante meets Beatrice, his former fiancée, and who is now a saint in heaven. And she leads him through the levels of heaven. All right. So, so I hope you guys are doing all well, are all doing well. Again, I've got my office hours. I've got Skype. You can call me anytime you want to talk about the class or just talk about life. I'd love to hear from you. And we will talk to you later. Bye.